right, everybody. Well, welcome. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're going to do a casual fireside chat style. I guess hold questions to the end of the segment, and we're just going to keep it pretty casual. I wanted to thank Leighton and the office quarters, Synergy, for letting us host this here. Much appreciated. You guys are always great. So thanks, Leighton. Looks like we have a good crowd, some entrepreneurs, some enterprise businesses, a few curious investors. No EBITDA tonight, though, guys. No EBITDA, just AI. I'm Paul Gosselin, founder of Newsy, and I'll be joined by Dr. Kostas Hatalis of GoCharlie. So why are we here tonight? I guess you guys are all asking yourself that. On March 22nd, just outside those doors, I had a conversation with this guy next to me, and it blew my mind. And at the time, AI wasn't on the radar for any of our software businesses. And after 30 minutes talking to him, I realized the potential that we had. So for days, I was in the office thinking of ways to improve. And fast forward 6 months, here we are. I'm an AI evangelist, probably the biggest one in the room. AI is catapulted above my Apple evangelism, so sorry, Steve Jobs. We've integrated multiple LLM, large language models, into both our platforms, and we did it in less than 2 months. So really excited about that. I'm an investor in the AI space, which is really exciting. When valuations are up here, it's great to get involved with new companies that have a lot of potential and are innovative and are going to create some impact. Fourth, we're going to be starting our own AI incubator right here at the Hamilton West campus. And we're really excited about it. I think it's going to be the first AI incubator in Pennsylvania. We're going to have to do some fact checking, but we're excited, get the community involved, local business, and it's just a lot of great synergy with it. And last but not least, I don't know where Brad Finberg went, we're going to have an on-prem AI solution with the help of Micro Innovation. We're going to be serving AI right from the facility as well. So really excited. It's going to be a trend that we just want to get behind right now. It's coming for regulation, compliance, affordability. Companies are going to start serving AI from their facilities. So it's really exciting, and GoCharlie has some really exciting tech that working with Brad and Micro Innovation to start serving this stuff. So the Hamilton West campus is really, a lot of great things going on. The incubator, we have the on-prem AI, GoCharlie, and we're just a stone's throw away from Air Products, which is one of my favorite companies in Lehigh Valley. So there's a lot of great tech on this side of the city, and we're just trying to get people to think of the west side of Allentown and maybe a little more interest with regard to tech and innovation. So with that, I'd like to formally introduce Dr. Kostas Hatalis, CEO, founder, dog lover, PhD from GoCharlie.
Thanks, Paul. Quick intro on myself, quick background, then I'll get into the background of GoCharlie. Born right here in Lehigh Valley at St. Luke's, went to Lehigh University. I have 3 bachelor's, master's, PhD, postdoc, all from Lehigh. After Lehigh, did a quick stint as a consultant and as a quant, and then in the middle of the pandemic, began my journey as an entrepreneur, building out GoCharlie, which was really born what I saw out of necessity, that AI was just beginning to rise as a buzz term, Gen AI. But at the time, it was being led only by OpenAI and Microsoft and maybe Google. There was nothing really happening at a lower level, at a lower scale. And there was this, I would say, perception that only these big tech giants can build these models. No one should even bother trying to build them. And therefore, you had this, I would say, kind of blue ocean opportunity to serve mid-sized enterprises, even small businesses with AI that's more catered to their needs. Even now, you have Microsoft talking about buying out nuclear power plants to power their massive data centers, because that's what you need to power these AI models, which is, quite frankly, a little bit ridiculous. And I'll get into why you don't need a nuclear power plant to power an AI model. But that's my background. Go Charlie is inspired by my actual puppy, Charlie. He's a white golden retriever. The team itself, we formed the company about 3 years ago in 2021. We first went through the Alchemist Accelerator through San Francisco. That's where I met my co-founder, Brennan here. He's our COO. We were all part-time until basically early 2023. That's when we all started full-time working together, building out our first MVP onto the market. We successfully raised a $2.5 million pre-seed round, led by and far by Ben Franklin Tech Ventures and the Stanford Research Institute out in San Francisco. And it snowballed. Of course, we have Paul, one of our latest investors, come on, super angel, and a few other angels in the area as well, some of you are present here too. Quick background, what we've been up to, and then we'll get into the questions, and then I'll make this announcement at the end. We've been basically in R&D mode over the last year after we've raised the funding in building these kind of new innovations, these new smaller models that can run on device, run on-prem, or even on the cloud 1,000 times cheaper. Because right now, for any enterprise that needs these Gen AI solutions, and we'll dive into what exactly is Gen AI, what are the applications of Gen AI, the prices are basically high 6 figures to 7 figures to run private dedicated solutions. And that is really out of the scope for many, many businesses, which I think is quite frankly a shame, because it has such immense application, that's immense potential to really cut costs and massively help increase revenue. With that, let's dive into it.
All right, Kostas. So what's the new wave of Gen AI? And how is it different than before, and what are its limitations?
So, first of all, does anyone know what Gen AI means? What does it stand for? Not you, Brennan. Anyone? Yes, David with a win. So it's generative artificial intelligence. The word generative meaning that you are generating new content, new things out of these models. And this is, the last few years has been a wave, and why it's different than past AI waves that occurred in the 2010s and the 2000s and the 1990s, albeit those waves were so small, they were barely even noticed as waves. I think most of you recognize the crypto blockchain waves, and then VR, AR, and other waves more than AI. But what is Gen AI? Why is it different this time? And why does this time actually, I would say, have much bigger implications than any other technology out there? And I'm also a bigger evangelist than you are, Paul. I did a PhD in it. That AI is truly the technology that will solve predominantly any problem that is being faced by white-collar workers. AI will be the solution to it. So Gen AI, effectively, it's this creation of what's called neural network models. It's a fancy way of saying it's a massive equation. So all of you are familiar with from back from high school, the equation for a line, y equals mx plus b, very simple stuff. Imagine that, but with a couple billion parameters, a couple billion weights. So m and b is 1 or 2 weights, or imagine if you had 7 billion weights, that's a neural network. And that's where we start to use the terms parameters. Someone here actually asked me, how do you measure these neural networks? Is it in megabytes? Why do we use these terms, billions and billions of parameters? We're just saying that they have millions and millions of weights that you need to calculate to fit a function. And these functions that we're fitting is basically, how do you create new content? ChatGPT, take that as an example, is a single neural network. You talk to it like you would anyone else on a chat-like interface, and all it's doing is simply predicting the next word. What is the likelihood of the next word to come out? Very simple idea, massive, massive applications. You have the ability to chat, to create documents, to rewrite emails, do almost anything in text. And then these models take it a step further, are generating images, and we have an image model ourselves that you're using, Paul. There's other companies building models for generating music and even generating video. And at first, you'll see images and video and music. You can tell it's AI, but over time, it's starting to get more and more photorealistic. The music, the videos, the images, the text is becoming so good, you cannot distinguish it from what a professional could make. And of course, AI can do it in milliseconds, whereas a professional designer, writer, analyst can do these tasks on the scale of hours to days. So that's why this wave is just really profound this time, because for the first time in history, AI is actually starting to augment and even approach the idea of automating workflows.
And we've seen that in our platform and what we're doing. The stuff that we've integrated has moved the needle, and we've already been able to monetize it in less than 3 months. So, I mean, to 20% revenue gains across one of our platforms, I think, Jason, just this in the last 3 months. So I think we went about it looking for small problems and trying to solve those small problems. You can't just, come up with, try to say AI is going to solve every problem for the business. You have to look at it. You have to look at these in micro little, just smaller and compartmentalize them. And you can execute them. And I think for small enterprises, just try to find some of the small problems that gain efficiency, whether it could move the needle for revenue. So we've been very successful. And we've only hit the tip of the iceberg. I think we've integrated 11 LLMs. So, and we haven't even touched the surface. So a lot of cool stuff that's coming from both our platforms. With that, so what does GoCharlie do in the space, and how is it different from, say, the competitors out there?
Yeah, so we focus on two types of problems. From a small business perspective, we do have off-the-shelf tools. You're using one of them. We call this an agent, which really helps businesses ideate, create new content, and iterate with workflows. Then, of course, we have more of an enterprise solution, which is to take our proprietary models, like with Paul here, and begin to customize them more towards the needs of a business, to their workflows. These workflows can include many things, such as sentiment analysis on bank statements for compliance purposes. They can include creating sales emails. They can include any form really of content creation, analysis, even automating certain aspects of a workflow, be it in marketing, sales, finance, anything that's text-based, our models can touch very easily and help augment that. A big distinction of how we're different is that, one, we're the only player, I guess, at this pre-seed stage that has built their own models. The next biggest player that has built their own models is Writer.com, and they raised about $150 million to build their models. And the third biggest player after that, of course, are the giants, Anthropic, which is owned by Amazon, OpenAI, who's basically owned by Microsoft, and of course Microsoft and OpenAI, so Microsoft and Google have built their own models. There's about less than 10 players out there that have built their own models. Very few have done it at the startup level that we are. No one has done it at our actual level. This provides us immense flexibility, especially on cost savings and quality, because we don't go out there and start saying, hey, if you want us to tweak just one little use case, that's going to cost you $700,000. Because if you go to OpenAI or Microsoft, who provide their solutions usually through consultancies like Bain and McKinsey and KPMG, they're going to charge enterprises, I guess, standard rates in the 7 figures.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons why we sort of weren't looking at the space, because it was so expensive and just didn't think it was affordable, and it was going to take too many resources. The GoCharlie API, which I think is one of the standouts of the product as well, allows our developers and engineers to talk to the tech in a really simple way. I think that's where some of the big guys maybe are limited, because their APIs, they can only build them out so much. So Charlie was able to keep customizing to what we need. And it's important, the devil's in the details when it gets down to some of this stuff. A new feature we have coming out in auto is talk to your car, essentially meet your vehicle. So the goal with automotive is to convert, right? Like you got to get these shoppers to the dealerships. That's where the conversions happen. So meet your car is a pretty interesting, they can talk to their car. How much horsepower? You know, you've ever gone down an automotive list and looked at trying to find like the horsepower or the torque or just some, you know, the weight, you know, you'll look for 10 minutes. Now you can just say, what's the weight of this car? Boom, and it gives it to you. What's the horsepower? Boom, it gives it to you. And you can ask it a lot of other questions. So talk to your car is a really specific, you know, solution that Charlie has built for us, and we're still refining it, but it's going to be launching in one of our new hyper local marketplaces for dealers soon. And in that marketplace is going to be only AI search. So whereas you have drop downs now to do searches, there won't be any. It'll be a prompt. You'll talk to it. That's how you're going to search for your car. Give me a white Ram 1500, less than 10,000. Boom, there they are. So it's a little ahead of its time because, you know, some people may not be, you know, familiar with searching like that, but that our platform, because we're developing the entire stack, we have the control to really do a lot of cool things with it. So, and we're really leveraging the AI to really make some of this stuff stand out and deliver results for dealers and the customers. That's what it really comes down to. Next question.
Yep.
What are some of the most common use cases and some of the more, you know, extravagant ones outside the bubble?
So we have the agent. Actually, you can see a demo happening right now on the screens here, used for content creation, for various business use cases and marketing. That is the most common. There's a video that will play right after this, which here, this one now playing is more towards retailers. We have products out there that can generate bulk product descriptions based on a ton of unstructured data. We have a product that we call the Product Brain that we're in talks with Williams-Sonoma to begin a program with them. And we're also, this is a bit confidential, in very early talks with the Simon Property Group and Spark Group, which, for those who are not familiar, these guys own every mall in America and every brand in those malls. They don't use an AI. And we just signed on board their director of innovation as an advisor to the company with equity, and we are slowly getting pushed into them to hopefully be their AI division and have technologies like this and what I'm about to propose here embedded slowly over the next few years within their brands. That'll be a big project. But that's the retail use cases. Of course, our tech goes way beyond retail as well and way beyond marketing. Some of the crazier things are more on the data analysis side, such as in finance and trading as well. And of course, this can also be used for a lot of legal and compliance purposes. That's why the on-prem solutions start to come into play, as we've been approached by a few legal firms that say, I have a lot of documents for discovery. I got to keep them on a certain server. They can't leave that server, but I need an AI to analyze these documents. Again, early talks for a lot of these projects, but that's where our AI can also play a big role.
And I think with regard, he mentioned data, you know, most companies, their data's in a mess. And, you know, Charlie deals with data pretty well, unstructured data. Obviously, if your data's in better form, it's much easier, but they do a great job at normalizing data. And I think a lot of businesses are going to need that. There are some companies, their data's in good shape, but a lot of businesses are going to need the normalization. So that's kind of part of their suite as well. They're good at that. Our data was clean, so they didn't need to normalize it. We've already normalized our data, but yeah. Next question. Which one are we at? Where's this all going, and how should we think of ways to apply this technology to our advantage in whatever market you want to
start becoming doomsday preppers? Right now, we're in the early stages of exploration from small businesses all the way to the enterprise level of Gen AI. It's being pushed and overhyped by the big tech giants, but it is incredibly early stage. And many of you who own small businesses, medium businesses, or some of you are part of bigger companies, enterprises, know that even with your own companies, adopting AI is going to be a very slow process. Take Simon, for example, or Williams-Sonoma. They're beginning pilot programs with the expectations of these going into production late next year or sometime 2026, which what that means for us is it's again very early, and the earlier you get in, the better. What it means for many of you as businesses is that this is a good time to start looking at AI. AI is here. It's going to get much and much better. And one thing that some people tend to miss is that they view the tech as being static. Okay, I tried ChatGPT. It's kind of mediocre. I don't want to apply AI into my tech stack, into my business. Next thing you know, a year or two goes later, ChatGPT or other players like ourselves, the technology gets more and more advanced. And a big thing to note is where it's going to go a bit more long term, let's say by the next decade and 10 years from now, is you'll have the rise of what we call agents, and you'll see this as a buzz term slowly pop up in all the news over time. An agent takes a lot of these underlying neural networks, these large language models, and starts to tie into all your software, all of your tools, your document tools, web search, everything. So anything you would have a normal employee use, be whatever, any CRM or ERP, any kind of tools you guys use, AI slowly will become embedded in all of these tools. And what you will do is you will ask the AI, run this entire workflow, like summarize these documents, then email me the documents, then reach out to the clients, then do this, do that. Effectively, where we're heading within the next 5, 10, 15 years, and it may sound like science fiction right now, but keep in mind a lot of this tech was science fiction 5 years ago, is any job that can be done remotely, that job is in incredible danger of being short-term augmented, which would be great for businesses and the employees, long-term automated, fully automated. There's nothing that AI, in theory, could not do using a keyboard and a mouse. If that's all you need as a tool to run any kind of a workflow, that's coming. Automation is coming for that job. So for those of you who are more hands-on or more have more human interaction in your, I would say, in your job, you're safe. For those who just work on a laptop all day and do nothing else, start picking up some social skills.
You mentioned some of the companies you're working with, but I think you were saying that you've been in talks with some other big companies, Revlon, some companies like this, and that sort, and they have no interest in doing AI in the short term, right? And there's a reason for that.
A few companies have not even begun their exploration phase yet. We'll take Foot Locker as an example. We reached out to them. They're beginning to just learn what is AI, which actually is prompting us to maybe also offer a consulting service as a way to grow into a company. Because what we're discovering is, despite the term AI being everywhere nowadays, few people even know what it stands for. Even fewer know how it works, let alone how to integrate it into complex business processes and business systems. So there's a massive hesitancy. The big players are like, we'll adopt this over the next 2 to 3 years. Medium and smaller players, maybe will adopt it towards the end of the decade. Just because of, I would say, the lack of knowledge of how it works, it causes fear of it feels risky to integrate some very complicated technology into my business. What if something goes wrong? And to be fair, there are a few horror stories. Actually, within the automotive industry, earlier this year, there was a story of some dealers, I think, out in Washington or Oregon, were implementing ChatGPT bots to interact with their customers, but they forgot to tell the bots not to sell the car, just to inform the customer. And so customers were hacking the bot, saying, "Sell me this car for $1." And the AI said, "Okay, I will sell you this for $1." And then they started getting lawsuits that no one was buying the car for $1. So there are risks, but this is where I think it's important that education plays a big role too.
We've patched that hole in our platform, by the way. Well, it made me, the bigger point in that is that it's not too late for enterprise, right? Like some of the biggest companies aren't going to be getting their feet wet for years. So it's still a new frontier, and it's not like you've missed it. Maybe you've missed NVIDIA's stock price. You should have bought that last year. That would have been a recommendation. But for most of the actual enterprise AI and just the entrepreneur AI, it's pretty still.
You see it like the dot-com boom in the late 1990s, huge craze, right? Then it bursts. But the true value of websites and all that IT, all that information technology started to show itself over the 2000s and the 2010s, and now we can't live without the internet. Most of our businesses would go bankrupt if it wasn't for the internet right now. Same thing will happen with AI with the next 5, 10, 15 years. It get more and more pervasive to the point that in the 2030s, we cannot imagine running our business without AI. So it's a good time to start exploring it.
Yeah. So I hear you working on some new innovative breakthrough. They did tell me about it, so I'm just sort of setting it up. So can you get into that a little bit?
Yes. So this is our first big announcement, really. So back here, maybe hard to read the slide a little bit, but over the last few months, we've been training a new model. We call this Charlie 1.5. That model is a 7 billion parameter model. That's a fancy way of saying that it's small. But as we were building that model, and that model is going to be great, fantastic. I'll get into a bit later, the applications of that model. We've had kind of a eureka moment of almost like a holy shit moment. So we've trained a model that is about 200 million parameters. To a lot of you, that is kind of an empty statement. What that means is it's a micro model. It's an incredibly tiny model that can run on a CPU. Now, why is that important? It's because the majority of these models, including our 7 billion, that right now you're using the first version of that model, run on GPUs. In fact, all AI runs on GPUs. This is why Microsoft is talking about, these massive contracts with nuclear power plants worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Because GPUs are insanely expensive to buy and to run. This is why NVIDIA right now is worth a $3-4 trillion stock. So no one has gone smaller because no one thought you could go smaller. And there's a lot of science and math to that. Anyone interested, I'd love to get geeky with you after this. But we've discovered, almost accidentally, me and my team sent out, okay, while we're training this model, let's train a tiny model, at 200 million, out of curiosity. And we came up with some very innovative algorithms of how to squeeze out quality. And to our astonishment, it started to produce a phenomenal result that were almost as good as the big model. So what this means is we have a model here that can run on a CPU, almost as fast on a GPU. This tiny model, we currently estimate, has about 70 to 80% of the quality of ChatGPT, which for most intensive purposes, you won't even notice a difference in quality as you talk to it, and can be, for just basically a few dollars, adapted to dozens and dozens of use cases. For the most part, this is going to introduce what we're hoping, a massive adoption craze. Because by running on a CPU, you can say all of a sudden, oh, I can run this on my laptop, I can run this on my phone, or even on the cloud. Renting a GPU server could cost you $5, $10, $20 an hour. Oh, that's not a lot. But over the course of a month, running that $20 an hour is going to cost you 10, 20, 30 grand for one GPU. And typically you have to run a cluster of these. You can easily get into 6 figures per month. Running a cluster of CPUs, a few bucks a month basically for most cloud providers. And most of your businesses, the bigger ones, already have private clouds on-prem, or work with IT companies that have private clouds that host your data. So these models can run on those private clouds or on your laptops within your workers or within your cloud provider, a fraction of the cost. And by also fine-tuning them for only a couple dollars basically, we can go beyond state-of-the-art results. So things like sentiment analysis or grammar checking for specific use cases, we can fine-tune almost unlimited version of these models for you guys, for any business really, and be able to solve unique problems, perfectly. I have here a nice chart. You have the top model makers who are going bigger and bigger and bigger. In fact, OpenAI is going to soon announce that GPT-5 is going to be a 10 trillion parameter model. Right now, their GPT-4 model is what's known as 2 trillion. What that means is they need about 700 GPUs just to get, to have one interaction with the model on ChatGPT. So that's obviously a massive cost that no company can really burden by themselves. With this, we're hoping that we can create mass adoption to it. And not only that, but guarantee privacy and security. So this is kind of like for us, the holy shit moment again, that this can really bring it out to a lot of businesses without even having to go through Microsoft or Google or OpenAI to get good quality. So I'm excited.
I see Brad licking his lips back there. CPUs, he's got a lot of CPUs stored in that storage shed back there, so put those to use.
There's still advantages to GPUs, but for most purposes, a CPU is going to be more than good enough.
So what does that mean for the future of AI?
What this means, two things. When it comes to these agents, with this, you could build what we call a swarm. So part of my PhD, I specialize in what's called swarm intelligence, which is take a very tiny little AI. It's good by itself, but what happens when you take 1,000 little AIs as a swarm working together? And you see this phenomena with birds and with ants and so forth, where you have a swarm of these little bots working together. They can accomplish many, many great things. And we believe these swarms, long term, could be the foundation of starting to not only augment, but really automate workflows in a lot of businesses. Short term, once we finish the R&D on this and start to launch this commercially, it means humongous cost savings. Because this can be launched, we're estimating at about annual contracts run one of the models, maybe 5,000, less than $1,000 a month. Actually much cheaper if you want to deploy it on your devices on-prem. We can also explore licensing the model, where we can just give the full ownership of the model, if it's fine-tuning your data, to you, which at that point many companies can claim, we have our own models that we've built and that we own and run on our devices. The future is really going to be, for the first time ever, distributed, decentralized, meaning you're not going to go through Google or OpenAI to get your AI. You will have your own AI on your own devices. It's private, it's secure, it's yours, and it's performing. That's really the future. It's going to be everywhere, no longer through OpenAI or Microsoft.
And these, how did you frame that? These, they talk to each other through a gate, or what was it called?
The swarm?
Yeah.
So the swarm, they talk to each other through their own language effectively, but you cannot do that right now with the current models out there. Because if you start to just build these agents, they're going to be very slow, very expensive. But really, to solve a problem, a complex problem that has, let's say it needs 50 different software tools, it needs some complex reasoning, a single LLM like ChatGPT will take forever. You may have to run it for days just to solve that problem. By using a cluster of, let's say, 1,000 of these models, where each model specializes in one thing. For example, that one thing could be reasoning. Another model specializes in planning. Another model specializes in how do I use web search? How do I use a certain CRM? Then they talk to each other, and you can solve a problem within seconds.
What would be a good example for, say, our Lutron friend over here?
For Lutron, a big benefit would be to start putting these on devices, actually, where I have to go through your product catalog to see what kind of smart device, but I know you guys have a lot of smart devices. These models can go even smaller, to the point they're about 10, 20, 40 megabytes big. And usually a lot of smart devices can have up to a gigabyte worth of memory, more than enough to store a model like this. So you can have very basic elements, like a built-in Alexa within the device, where it doesn't need to go to the internet to process voice or some other task. So I think it can be very exciting for a lot of device makers, where they can just have it embedded, and you don't need an internet connection at that point to do a lot of smart tasks.
Wow. Those are all my questions. Do you have any questions for yourself?
We're currently working with Intel, actually.
Okay.
We've signed an NDA to try it out on a new CPU. I can't tell you what CPU it is, but it's a new neural type of CPU. Our goal is to showcase results with them. And if things go well, we're hoping to start forming partnerships with device manufacturers, actually.
Say like Snapdragon, Qualcomm, that kind
Exactly.
of stuff. Yeah.
Especially if Qualcomm buys out Intel. A lot of you may have seen the news with Apple, their new M1, M3 chips that are going to the new iPhones. They're building models that are about 3 billion parameters big to run on the iPhone to do one or two things, like grammar checking, checking your email, and so forth. A model this small, when you have a lot less memory, a lot less power, and can do a lot more tasks. You can specialize it in dozens and dozens of tasks. So this may be a fantasy of mine, but I would love to get connected to Qualcomm, Intel, and convince them to throw these to Android phones, for instance. And then all of a sudden, your Android phone offline can start talking to you. You can ask it, "What's the weather like?" Pull up my calendar.
For example, Alexa, then, right? Like it could run an Alexa essentially.
Effectively, yeah.
And Alexa or Amazon just did a big multi-billion-dollar contract with Intel. So I think they're trying to separate themselves a little bit from NVIDIA, and so short NVIDIA now. I'm just kidding. Don't do it. Anything else?
I think with that we should.
Any questions? Take some
open the floor.
questions.
Kostas, you mentioned work that's being done online and remotely, augmented during the next few years, and then basically replaced in X. What's X?
Hard to give a perfect prediction, but I would say in about 10 years, most white-collar jobs that are done remotely that don't need a lot of human-to-human interaction or any other kind of physical labor, I don't see any obstacles as to why AI could not fully automate that job.
Next question for you. That was in right field. This is the left field. I have two 10-year-old grandsons. What can I tell them is going to be AI whenever they graduate from high school in 8 years? What would impress the heck out of them? I told them, this is what it's going to be like when you graduate from high school.
I would tell them first and foremost, as you look towards college, start looking to get skills, social skills and physical skills, whether that means going into the trades or going into maybe more advanced electrical engineering, anything that's hands-on or has a social aspect like teaching, healthcare, and so forth, I think will be forever safe because you always need a human touch to some of these things. Even if AI can do it, I think we will always prefer people to do some things like teaching or having your nurse be a human, not a robot. Because I think about this, my daughter's 3 years old, like where's this going in 20 years from now when she's going to finish college? And I have concerns that the traditional paths of, hey, let me be a lawyer, let me even be a programmer, a software engineer, because when I was younger, 10 years ago, people were saying, go study programming, it's the new future. Now all of a sudden you have a big scare where AI is starting to program. And you have a lot of software programs beginning to sweat now. Even our own CTO is like, we just used some of this AI and it coded a lot of the stuff that it would take me weeks to do myself. Sales is a big one that I would say is kind of safe. If you have to go out and start doing sales in person, learn that skill, learn to be social, learn to use your hands. I used to say learn to program, but I no longer am an evangelist of, I still think you should learn how to program, but it should not be your only skill.
Like a golf pro would be good, right? Become
Exactly.
a golf pro, right? If you can play golf, I guess.
Question.
So I use AI for a lot, all the businesses that I own. And one of the things that I'm learning as I go along is how to speak to AI. Because I think I'm a high IMI days, if you ever know anything about a business assessment. So I speak professionally and I know how to communicate, but one of the things that I've learned, I have probably like 30 apps, and I spend a lot of money on AI. Something you said in media. I brought it up to 140,000 followers just using AI. And like I just put together a marketing plan for the next 3 months in the last 5 seconds while we were talking, just because it was fresh in my mind. But one of the things that intrigued me that you said was how to get multiple AIs collaborating with each other. Because I just spent like $8,000 in the last 3 months on a brand new assistant who's unreliable, always late, never shows up. I mean, it's like, she's supposed to do my calendar. She went into my calendar, deleted 8,000 emails. I mean, absolute cluster blank. So I would like to eventually replace some of that administrative work by having AI to do my calendar, my appointments, the follow-up, integrate with everything. How does somebody like myself, I have 3 businesses, they're all 6-figure income businesses. I would like to be able to take my business and say, hey, I no longer, other than salespeople, like you said, I'm in sales. I would like to be able to take my commercial lending business, my real estate business, to 100% AI connected. I use it for social media. I tell AI, go in and look for viral videos, tell me what I should be doing. So I know I'm learning. I have purchased a book called The AI Bible, on how to talk to AI. And like I said, I'm obsessed. I love AI. So that's why I'm here. Right? This is something that definitely gets me excited.
Yeah. So what he means, for those who don't know, when you talk to AI, this is also called prompt engineering. It's like, how do you properly prompt the AI to execute a task for you to achieve it the way you want it? And it's still not there yet. AI is not perfect. So the first problem is, how do you prompt it properly? It is getting better. In fact, some of our new models that will come out soon will start to alleviate the issue of prompting, where sometimes you have to write like a 2,000-word essay just to get the right prompt to do the right task for you. The second problem is more on the agent front, is how do you get the AI to collaborate with other AIs and especially with other tools. The best solutions right now are more custom, which is like what we do, and I'm happy to talk after this as well. There are no solutions off the top of my head that are $20 a month off the shelf to go and buy it, that'll say, hey, it's going to plug to every tool out there. All I got to tell it is, do this, do that, and have it go off and do it on its own. The closest is probably Zapier. They have ChatGPT built into it, but that requires probably, I would say, weeks of setup, and we've consulted a few clients on it. It's still quite a mess. So no one has fully figured out how to fully automate larger workflows with it. That's it, like fully automating a full marketing campaign. We've begun that process. We've begun working with a couple of marketing agencies and some big ones called Hawk Media and Silverside out in San Francisco. We've begun building pilot programs to start automating bigger and bigger projects. Right now, it's within the realm of I'd say custom projects to do something more advanced like that. Otherwise, like you said yourself, is you buy a lot of tools and then you manually sort of stitch them together yourself. That's the best way to do it right now.
I can attest, I don't know how many models you built for us, maybe 19, but they're all in one little toolkit for me. And it's basically my agent on my desktop. I talk to it, like I don't have to go to multiple applications. I can generate an image, I can get sentiment analysis, I can write an email, I can do hundreds of different marketing things. It's sort of like, these are, and that's sort of where the idea of Newsy came, to basically do this, to integrate all of these LLMs into one easy-to-use platform. So it definitely works. I mean, Charlie's LLMs are all in one sort of suitcase for me.
To your point, within the next couple of years, you're on the right track, and I think you're way more ahead than most people in the Lehigh Valley on AI, which is great. I love to see that. The next 2, 5, 10 years, you will start to see billion-dollar businesses being run by a single person. And I think Elon Musk said that about a year ago, that it is coming. Because you take the risk as the business owner, and then you have a bunch of AIs do your sales, do your marketing, do your finance, do your legal, do everything for you, and you just monitor them through a dashboard and just kind of put it on autopilot. That's really the future where a lot of businesses especially like I would say digital businesses are going. David?
The speed of the smaller model. When we first started talking about data analysis, I was building, using the OpenAI API. It was slower than just using the machine learning model. Has that changed with the smaller model, or is it still slower just around the CPU and not supporting it?
So the smaller model on a CPU will actually be a little slower than a GPU. To your question on machine learning, so let me educate everyone here too. These neural networks that are kind of do all-in-one model can do many, many things. But for some traditional AI applications, such as regression or classification, for example, let's say you have a camera and the camera looks down on a conveyor belt and you got to identify certain products on the conveyor belt. Using models like this may be overkill. If that's all you want to do, you can train much smaller models to just do one thing. These are more like a army switchblade, a Swiss knife, where you can teach it to do many, many things, and it can transition between those many, many things as needed. Going on a device on your phone, that would be like acting like an Alexa, where it knows how to use many different tools. But going and just doing one thing, let's say regression, doing prediction, it is always optimal to just use a tiny model that's specialized in doing just that one thing.
I have a question around trust and how this technology addresses trust. So you were talking about that ultimately white-collar jobs can be replaced. And, you have an organization, so you have subject matter experts, they have pedigree, you trust them because you see them, you know them. Over time, that changes and this technology is deployed. How do you bridge that concern companies have that the information that they do get is trustworthy? And where is that in terms of policing that organizations make the right business decisions based on the outputs and the information that is,
Right.
and you talked about 5, 10, 15 years as that's evolving. Today you could say we trust what when we search on Google, but then there's fact checking and all that. How do you see that play out?
Right now, where it stands today is that all AI models, these generative models, have a problem called hallucination. Because all they're doing is predicting the next word. And while they are very useful for a lot of tasks, when you have problems where you need facts and you got to trust what the model's giving you, where creativity, like marketing, could be very creative. But let's say you're getting a legal report and you got to make sure everything down to the T is perfect. Without fine-tuning the model for your use case, where you can guarantee the quality and the trust in it, just out-of-the-box models, whether it's us or OpenAI or Google, that's going to be an issue. Which is why it's very, very important to basically work with the model and tuning it basically to your problem, so you can trust the output to make sure the accuracy is as high as possible. Otherwise, with hallucinations, they will always tend to kind of make up some stuff once in a while. And that is a problem. But that said, the industry as a whole is getting better and better, because when ChatGPT came out 2 years ago, out of the box, it hallucinated like a mad dog. Before that, you had GPT-3 and other smaller models like BERT from Google, even worse in terms of hallucination. And then before 2020, this tech was science fiction, didn't exist yet. So as a technology, it's about 4 years old, but it's getting better every year, basically. Which is why in 5 to 10 years from now, I think the trust level will be there. That's not to say that someone won't hack it and try to screw you over. That will be a problem that probably other technologies will help mitigate it. But these models, if you're working closer with them and you own them, you can get them to 99.9% quality. And you should. You shouldn't trust. I would never trust OpenAI or Google with any private data.
So what are some of those ethical concerns, and are there groups within the industry that are taking them seriously as they build these out?
I don't take any, outside of maybe some academic labs, any group that is for profit, including us, I would not trust ethically. unless you're doing a one-on-one project where you can control your data, control your model, you're going on faith. You're going to trust us or trust Google or Microsoft or the big players, which is why it's more important than our belief is just let us give you the models. We'll help you tune them, but ultimately the business or the consumer should own the models, own the data, versus just saying, I'm going to trust Google and whatever they give me, that's the word of God. Because it is unethical in the sense that Google has been caught multiple times over the last few years showing bias in their models. So has Microsoft. They've also been caught, all the big players, having copyrighted data within the models, and then all of them now getting sued